And it's Bard on the Box now on BBC Two, with another brief glimpse into Will's world. Tonight, the fashion victims of the 1500s.
A German visitor to England in 1592 noted how the English would happily go dressed out in exceedingly fine clothes and give their attention to their ruffs and stuffs, whilst at home they had not a piece of dry bread. England had become a nation of fashion victims.
In Shakespeare's day, looking good and making sure others noticed was essential. Everybody wanted to be in on the act, no matter what the cost. And why not, in a country where everything was new? A new religion, new ideas, new thoughts, new dreams. What better way of celebrating all this novelty than with a new sleeve or a new codpiece? Bigger, richer and gaudier than ever seen before. The supreme supermodel presiding over this national fashion fest was the Queen herself, Elizabeth I. A maiden queen that shone as Titan's ray, in glistening gold and peerless precious stones. Yet her bright blazing beauty did essay to dim the brightness of her glorious throne. At her accession, she was a young woman with not the world's best claim to the throne. She quickly learned that one of the keys to survival as a monarch was to look the part. To flatter her, even profess love for her, was considered obligatory, but to have your ruff, doublet or hose complimented by her in exchange, oh, that was heaven itself. When boredom set in, she'd take off from town to town on a progress, a carnival of wonder with herself as its centrepiece, dressed in her most outlandish bejewelled finery, surrounded by her only slightly less sumptuous courtiers. To see Elizabeth's progress pass was to witness majesty. Elizabeth was queen and England was her catwalk.
Yes, accuse me of false modesty if you must, but this does seem rather large.
Oh, I think it is. I think this is some designer sending you up, actually.
But its function is to allow easy access for toiletry purposes.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And other purposes.
Why cod? Is it because it's like a wobbly fish in there?
No, I'm afraid not. Cod simply means bag.
Oh.
It's an old Middle English word for bag, so it was the bag for your piece.
Oh. It's not the sort of thing you'd do a couple of hours tap dancing in, really, or
no.
a game of tennis.
Though they did dance extremely energetically.
Yeah, galliards and stuff like that.
Yes, lots of throwing your partner into the air.
You would get up a certain glow.
A certain glow.
A certain amount of wetness would accumulate.
A certain intimate odour would have been difficult to avoid.
Presumably they perfumed themselves.
Perfumed themselves a great deal, but on the other hand, I'm sure our sensitivity to smells as to temperature is something that have increased very greatly. Do you want to do this up so that you can... Oh, you're going to disappear altogether.
I have disappeared altogether.
Yes.
Is this entirely necessary?
It was a Spanish fashion that immobilized the wearer to make it sure that you were classy enough in order to afford to have servants, really.
So one of the points of the costume was to show off that you didn't actually need to move at any point in your life.
That's right, you didn't need to do the washing up in that.
Yeah, or indeed do a lot of standing up or sitting down or walking around.
You'd have stood a lot, because chairs were rather unusual.
You'd have stood posingly.
Yeah. You'd have posed.
Yes.
Yes, a lot of posing.
Like that. And so you'd have had 5 or 6 servants to put you in your pose
Yes.
for the day.
Yes.
Sew you into it.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And then you just stay like it.
Mm-hmm.
Can I try the hat on?
Of course.
Which way round?
Seam at the back, I should think, at a jaunty angle.
Jaunty.
looks lovely.
Oh, mercy God. What masking stuff is here? What's this? A sleeve? It's more like a demi-cannon. What, up and down, carved like an apple tart? What, i' devil's name, tailor, call'st thou this?
Those who knew the language of costume could read the virtue and magnificence of the Queen in every detail of her apparel. The bright colours, dubbed with names more exotic even than those on a Dulux chart, lusty gallant, peas porridge tawny, goose turd green, each had a meaning. The language and symbolism of colour combinations was highly developed.
It was a lover and his last with a hay, with a
Lovers could carry on relationships so complex as to nowadays require the services of a qualified therapist. A man might wear a blue sash to show servitude to his mistress. The lady might wear green to show she was his.
The cunning courtier dressed never to compete with, but always to compliment the Queen. Here's Raleigh, dressed in silver and black, the Queen's favourite colours at the time. What spectacle it must have been when word got round. The whole court dressed alike in silver and black. Until the following day, of course, when the Queen decided that goose turd green was more becoming.
Throughout Elizabeth's reign, there was also a growing effeminacy in menswear. Big hips, earrings, lacy bits. Gender bending was chic. Another tribute to the dominance of the Queen, perhaps, or a sign of a society so self-confident that even sexual identity was a plaything.
All this finery came at a price. At one point, the Earl of Essex owed his draper £736, and this in a time when £4 was sufficient bribe to buy you a seat in Parliament. There are records of people selling their livestock to pay for fine silks. There was also a thriving second-hand clothes market in London, but hygiene being what it was, a second-hand codpiece too often came with livestock of its own, which in times of plague could give you more than a nasty nip.
It was a lover and his last with a hay, with a
Sadly, when Elizabeth died, the brilliance of her age died with her.
Thus, the theatre and playfulness of Elizabeth's England gave way in time to Cromwell and Newton and the stay-pressed, drip-dry, easy-clean, no-fun 20th century.
Well, they were the close of the day, and the rest, as they say, is Elizabethan history. And speaking of which, still to come tonight, the last in a series of Elizabeth R. That's in half an hour. Shakespeare season. And before that, on BBC Two, it's Bard on the Box, and another brief glimpse of life in Willsworld. Tonight, a 10-minute tonic.
When you do rise in the morning, rise with mirth and remember God. Stretch forth your arms, your legs, and your body, cough and spit, and then go to your stool and make your egestion.
The Elizabethans were obsessed with their bodies, and monitoring their state of health was a daily preoccupation. This isn't entirely surprising when we consider that their average life expectancy was just 35 years. Many died in childhood from malnutrition or infectious diseases such as diphtheria, cholera, typhoid, influenza, smallpox, and bubonic plague. The playwright William Shakespeare lost 3 sisters in infancy, but himself managed to shuffle off this mortal coil at the ripe old age of 52. In Shakespeare's day, notions about the workings of the body and explanations for illness reflected classical Greek theories. Health was thought to be governed by the 4 vital forces of earth, air, fire, and water. These elements made up all matter, and a healthy person would have a perfect balance of each. The slightest imbalance could lead to sickness or death. Living in the shadow of death and disease, Elizabethan therapists wrote extensive manuals bulging with advice on do-it-yourself health maintenance. These regimens of health dealt with everything from plague to hiccups.
To wash the hands with cold water is very wholesome for the stomach and liver. But to wash with hot water engendereth rheums, worms, and corruption in the stomach, because it pulleth away natural heat unto the warmed place which is washed.
Some of these healthcare tips were so lavatorial and melodramatic as to make even the most sanguine person a windy hypochondriac.
Great harms have grown and maladies exceeding by keeping in a little blast of wind. So cramps and dropsies, colics have their breeding, and mazed brains for want of vent behind.
Sitting down to a meal was a minefield of do's and don'ts. Food was believed to be made up of the 4 elements, and each type had its own qualities and effects on bodily function.
Parsnips and carrots are hot and dry. They both have virtue to break wind and expel urine. Raw leeks are hot and dry in the 3rd degree. Their nourishment is naught. They hurt the eyes and engender black, melancholy blood and cause terrible dreams. A need shall compel a man to sleep after his meat. But let him make a pause, and then let him stand and lean and sleep against a cupboard.
Leading a balanced, moderate lifestyle was all very well, but it didn't stop you from getting sick all the time. There had to be explanations for the causes of illness beyond the leek or the parsnip. Without the benefit of clean water, antibiotics and rat poison, infectious diseases were thought to be caused by invisible forces at work, such as corrupt air, witches' charms, divine retribution, or planetary movements. Since ancient times, physicians had been depicted as astronomers, and stargazing was a fashionable but essential pastime for anyone seriously interested in looking after their own health. In 1603, a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Sagittarius foretold of an outbreak of the epidemic plague. The prudent spread herbs and onions and wore sweet-smelling pomanders as a novel but sadly ineffective preventative. Each sign of the zodiac governed a different part of the body, and diagnosis depended as much on the state of the planets as the state of the patient.
They do say, as it is well proved, when as the sun and moon do enter any of their circles in those great bodies, then our little bodies on earth do feel the goodness or evilness of them.
Much therapy was based on restoring the body's natural balance by bloodletting. The offending ailment could then be sucked out by a leech. Whether by leech or scalpel, the art of bloodletting was open to abuse, and a thriving market in quackery ensured that many people were robbed of a saucer or two of blood, for almost any ailment, from measles to melancholy. Illness was thought to be accompanied by a shift in personality, and attending to the mind was as important as looking after the body. A sick person was likely to be prescribed something to cheer the spirits.
To bedward be you merry, or have merry company about you, so that no anger or heaviness, sorrow nor pensivefulness do trouble or disquiet you.
Ailments that didn't actually kill you often grumbled on for years, but the power of belief was as strong then as it is today, and it's likely that many of their remedies made them feel better, even if they didn't get better. The Elizabethan vision of health encompassed not just medicine, but philosophy, religion, art, nature, magic, and the cosmos. They may have talked a lot of unscientific gibberish, but their approach to healing was a lot more holistic than ours is today.
Drama is a role called Hamlet. Extracts from new productions and archive film of classic performances in Playing the Dane, Sunday night at 9:35, here on BBC Two.
From the Bard on the Box season now, BBC Two takes to the road with Sandy Toksvig in search of Will's World.
There isn't much of the city wall of London left, and what there is, frankly, could do with some serious repointing. But in Elizabeth I's time, this city wall went right around the city, inside which theatres were forbidden. So they were all in the Elizabethan suburbs on the outside of the wall. And that's where I'm heading.
Yes, love.
At Curtain Road, number 86, please.
Yeah, right, you are.
Looking for the Elizabethan Theatre, are you?
What makes you say that?
Logical, innit? The only thing Curtain Road's famous for is it's where they built London's first ever theatre. Am I right?
Yeah, well done.
Whosoever shall visit the Chapel of Satan, I mean the theatre, shall find there no want of ruffians, nor lack of impudency. Anthony Mundy, 1580. It's my specialist subject, Puritan writings, 1576 to 1642. I'm studying for mastermind.
That's a bit of luck.
Hated the theatre, them Puritans.
Yeah, I know, thanks. The Puritans, they were in charge of the city corporation in those days. They did hate the theatre, so they refused to allow any to be built inside the city walls. So if you wanted to build a theatre, you had to put it where the Puritans had no control, outside the city walls, which is where we're heading, north of the city, in what's now Hackney.
The theatre, 1576.
London's very first theatre, brilliantly called The Theatre, which kept the entertainment listings to a minimum. But here was performed A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Merchant of Venice, Henry IV Parts 1 and 2, Romeo and Juliet, Love's Labour's Lost, Henry VI, all of his parts, Titus Andronicus, a veritable circuit of Shakespeare. I suppose you already know where we're going next.
Hewitt Street, just round the corner.
10 out of 10.
Here we are, Curtain Theatre, 1577.
Makes you feel proud to stand near the site of the Curtain Theatre. Mind you, the plaque that Hackney Council has put up also makes you feel short and as if your eyesight's failing. South of the river now, to Bankside, as I'm sure you were about to tell me. It was Philip Henslow who moved the whole theatre scene south of the river. In 1587 he built the Rose Theatre amongst the brothels and inns and bear-baiting arenas of Southwark. So what did you Puritans think of that then?
Not a lot they could do outside the city walls, see? Joke of it is, the area was run by the Bishop of Winchester, who actually owned 2 of the whorehouses.
You wouldn't get that kind of thing happening these days, no. About 5 years ago, they demolished an office block in the area and they discovered the foundations of the actual Rose Theatre. It's incredibly exciting.
Here we are then, Rose Theatre, 1587. Can't make head or tail of it.
Well, you see, at the time the site was discovered, the government refused to put a preservation order on it, so they built this whacking great modern building over the top of us. But the brilliant thing is, the architects put these girders in, so potentially the whole site is still here. They've got the water and the concrete protecting it at the moment, and, well, they just need a few million to dig it out again.
Right, Globe next.
Oh, where's the cab?
No, it's only around the corner.
All right, thanks, Fred.
Here we are, the Globe, 1599.
All's Well That Ends Well was done here, As You Like It, Twelfth Night, Coriolanus, Hamlet, Lear...
Macbeth.
Othello.
Game at Chess.
The Malcontent.
London Prodigal.
The Revenger's Tragedy.
The Bloody Brother.
News from Plymouth.
Ah, now then, News from Plymouth. They was always nicking news stories for plays, weren't they? My absolute favourite was Arden of Faversham. Do you mind if I
don't suppose there's any point in trying to stop them.
The lamentable and true tragedy of Mr. Arden of Kent, who was most wickedly murdered by his disloyal and wanton wife, who hired 2 desperate ruffians, Blackwell and Shackbag, to kill him, wherein is shown the great malice and dissimulation of a wicked woman. Now, that's what I call theatre.
A potted history of the Globe. The original Globe was built with the timbers from the old theatre at Shoreditch, kind of Elizabethan recycling. Shakespeare was one of the co-owners, and it's amazing to think that 3,000 people could have come and watched a play at the old Globe. Because it wasn't all smooth sailing. In 1613, they were doing a production of Henry VIII, when a particularly zealous stage manager set off a cannon, set fire to the theatre, and the whole thing burnt down. But they did rebuild it, and it flourished until those dreary old Puritans decided to close all the theatres in London down. So the Globe was demolished to make way for splendid tenements. And in 1949, a young, idealistic actor from America called Sam Wanamaker came looking for the Globe in London and was surprised he couldn't find it. And he started a campaign to rebuild the Globe using traditional methods, and that's what they're doing all around me. Should be able to buy your tickets about 1996, I reckon. Of course, it was a lot more fun to be in the audience in Elizabethan times, much more like being in a modern comedy club instead of some stuffy theatre. There was beer and food for sale all the way through the performance, ale, fruit and nuts. Not just for eating, you could chuck it at the actors. It was heckling and hissing and smoking. The said plays are the ordinary places of meeting for all vagrant persons, horse stealers, whoremongers, cousiners, coonie-catching persons, practices of treason and such like.
Lord Mayor of London, 1594.
Oh, I believe it was, yeah. Ooh, listen, I've got a ticket for the National tonight, but I need to do a bit of shopping, Reg. I want to behave like a proper Elizabethan audience. Right, got everything. My pipe, my ale, fruit, nuts to throw. Come on, Hamlet, down the front. Here you go, son.
Here. I left these in the back of the cab.
Oh.
I hope you don't mind. I've been having a flick through. Listen to this. At plays, the nip, pickpocket, standeth there leaning like some manly gentleman against the door as men go in, and spieth what every man hath in his purse, and where and in what place. That's Robert Greene. Ah, here's a good one. Theatres are snares unto fair women. In the playhouses in London, it is the fashion of youths to go first into the yard and to carry their eye through every gallery, then, like ravens when they spy the carrion, thither fly, and either bring them home to their houses on small acquaintance or slip into taverns when the plays are done.
Oh, I better go.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. No, listen, you keep the books. Yeah, it's been real good fun.
Oh, that's not just a job.
No, no problem. I've got to call me staff for the theatre. Elizabethan, eh?
Yeah, well,
Take care, Ed.
Tomorrow is St.